I was extremely flattered, somewhat embarrassed, being of Swedish background, and we don't like to say that we know how to do anything, and quite intrigued because accepting the award in person would give me the opportunity to take a look at the class of 2013. As Linnee said, I spent the first 8 years of my life at 3236 George Avenue. That's the red house in the middle of the block between 32nd and 33rd Street. The land on which your high school now stands was the great world of adventure for us 52 kids who lived on the block. In the summer it was full of milkweed and sunflowers. In the winter it was flooded over to make a skating rink. And there was even a haunted house that stood alone in the field, its shutters rattling when the wind blew. About a mile away at Fern Hill School when I was 10, I was lucky enough to have a 5th grade teacher who once a week would let us listen to the Minnesota School of the Air on the radio if we would keep our heads down on our desks. The program was called The Distant Lands, and the introduction, intoned by a deep-voiced man, went, "For you, the comfort of your own four walls. For me, the distant lands." And that did it for me. The seed was planted, and since that time, there have been many distant lands. At first, distant states, then Mexico and Canada, then Europe, then exotic New York, so different then from what I thought was dull and prosaic Minnesota. Then Africa, then the Middle East, Latin America, Europe again, Asia, and back to Africa. One day about 4 or 5 years ago, my brother drove me to see the house on George Avenue. Over the years, it kept looking better and better, and the trees were bigger and bigger. Then we turned the corner onto 33rd Street, and there were 3 Somali girls sitting at the picnic table in front of the school. By this time, I'd been living in Nairobi, Kenya for a number of years, where I was the East Africa bureau chief for the Associated Press, so I recognized who the girls were, but I had never imagined seeing them in front of the place I went to high school and from which I graduated in 1960, 53 years ago this week. So I got out of the car and said hello, and they were probably just as surprised to hear a white-haired Minnesota lady greet them in the smattering of Somali she had picked up while reporting from their country. So, the distant lands have come to St. Louis Park, and your class is the image of a world my class was only beginning to imagine. Your school days are over, and you're looking forward to a big and long night tonight. And then it's your turn to embark for the distant lands, whether they be in St. Cloud, Australia, the U.S. Naval Academy, still exotic New York, and beyond. You are far better technologically equipped than I ever was, and certainly have much more developed and agile thumbs. And from the bit of time I've spent with some of you, you appear far more self-confident. But perhaps underneath those composed exteriors, there are doubts and fears about what lies ahead. And maybe you really don't know what you want to do or be. Well, neither did I. And I didn't find out until much later when I answered an ad in the Buenos Aires Herald that said, "Journalist seeks Girl Friday, no experience necessary." I had studied political science, not journalism, and had been told 10 years earlier that NBC did not hire women to be journalists. But somehow I got the job, and a few months later went from being Girl Friday to Girl Reporter for that same NBC. What I lacked in experience, I made up for in curiosity, something that had been encouraged and nurtured during my 12 years in the St. Louis Park school system. And I had taken the risk of applying for a job about which I discovered I knew very little, and which eventually led to my becoming a journalist in the distant lands. So, if you will accept a bit of advice from a hopefully still peppy and fellow Parkite, don't worry too much now about what you will become, but instead enjoy the process of becoming what you don't yet know you want to be. Take some risks, within reason, wearing a helmet if necessary, and go down the road less traveled. You can always turn around if you don't like it. And ask questions, whether you're hoping to be a journalist, or the proverbial rocket scientist, or a master chef, or a rapper, or a designer, or a gardener. Curiosity will be one of your most important tools. Keep it well-oiled and sharp. And above all, have fun. Thank you.